welcome to Beauties and Beasties, the independent pest podcast of the UK.
Hello. How you doing?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I've had a very good week. I'm very happy. It's good.
Go on.
Believe it or not, this is my happy face. There we go. It's just been a very productive week. It's just been one of those that's gone on quite well. I also, yes, look at us, repping the brand. You can tell one of us has got our camera. Loads of people on already. Loads of folks saying hello. So Fish for London, Sean, Jack, you're all in almost before the credits finish there. So evening, everybody. But yeah, look, we're both on brand tonight. It's almost like we've got important guests on in a little bit, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, to be fair, I just put this on to piss Stuart Blair and Billy off. So, because I keep meaning to send them a t-shirt, and it's become like this point of contention. Then I get busy and I don't send it. And I hope they're going to watch it tonight. And I thought, do you know what it is? I'll just put it on to annoy them a little bit more. So when they come on, this is what they look like. I'm sending it. I'm going to send you when I get a moment. Just haven't had a chance.
Are you actually wearing Stuart's at the moment and Billy's? Just pre-wearing them, just taking the shine off them.
It looked like I was wearing my dad's if I put theirs on.
Oh, thank you all to all of our listeners. You're all appreciated.
Yeah.
But yeah. I tested the limits of remote work. It's probably why I'm so cheerful, actually. Tested the limits of my remote working capacity this week. Disappeared off down to Devon for 3 days. Took my laptop with me. Did all of my work within a stone's throw of the beach. It was very nice. It's nothing soothes the soul like having your lunch, which being a pasty and a coffee by the sea. I think that's something to be said, isn't it?
Yeah, I put a computer in at home so that I've got the option to work from the house. But like dinner time comes, so sometimes I've got to fly down the office to jump on a computer. So I put a computer in here, and that's what the headphones and the background's about. Because we tried it last week, and obviously, for the hour that I was on, my 2-year-old decided to just breathe the living shit out the living room door. I could hear it like reverberating around the house. So I brought the posh headphones back, and we're going to try and give this a go and see if it helps. But if it doesn't, I've tried.
I mean, it's interesting to say, having a computer at home. It's interesting because I work from home and I'm very bad at switching off. I've got a computer at my house, and if I think I just need to get a bit more done, I'll keep working. And sometimes I find myself working till 8 to 9 o'clock at night before I realized actually there is other things to do with my life. And so it's quite interesting. I know a lot of folks will sort of like sit and do their invoices and the treatment reports of an evening. And so, do you take that as time worked, or it's an interesting yes, pasties. But away from pasties, away from sitting and working too long, we had some good guests last week, didn't we? We had some good chats, very enjoyable. But I think probably more than anything, we are going to have some fun with this week's podcast guests, and I'm actually champing the bit to bring them on a little earlier than we would do normally. Yeah, pasties means something very different in the States.
Know what that means. What's it mean in the States?
But we've got two folks from the States who may or may not want to elucidate as to what that is in just a second. But what are you doing, man? Right,
just making sure that as soon as Stuart Blair comes on, he sees that the t-shirts are real and he hasn't got one.
Oh, lordy. Right, so with that, shall we bring our guests on and we will have a nice chat? So, welcome to the stage, please, Jerusha and Jenny. How are you doing?
Wonderful. How are you guys?
Great.
We're doing good, other than some mild confusion as to my, vocabulary being something wrong. So before we go too much further into this, am I allowed to ask what a pasty is in the States? No?
A pasty is not a food item in the States. Generally, a pasty, what I think, Jenny, I assume you're thinking the same thing, is a decorative sticker that you would put in the chest region to cover up a little bit, but still show something.
Right. Well, in which case,
a little different.
Yeah, just doing that a lot. I think you're the point. I never thought, of all of the things, I thought we'd have a problem with taking this little podcast from the UK and going more global. I didn't think that the first issue that we would have with that would be my use of the word pest. So.
I've heard of it, though. I knew what you meant when you said it. It just means a little bit different here.
Just a little bit different. So, ladies, would you be so kind as to introduce yourself to our listeners, please? Just a little bit about who you are. I think we'll start with Jerusha first. So, please introduce yourself.
My name is Jerusha. I live in Colorado in the United States. It's a mountainous, kind of desert town, or state, excuse me. I've been in pest control for 5.5 years, and I started in a much colder climate and moved down to a nice warm climate. I have a couple of kids. I've just hanging with them, work a lot, and now I'm just beyond thrilled to be hosting a podcast about pest control as well with Jenny. So
absolutely. So for those who aren't listening or listening back or may not know you guys, what's the name of your podcast?
Pestrogen.
Excellent. It's a strong name, and I'm one that I'm sure we're going to have a lot more detail on in just a minute. But Jenny, over to you.
Yes. So I live in Ohio, so Midwestern United States. I've been in pest control for about 4 years now, going on 4 years, which I now do commercial pest control, which I know is kind of different where you guys are, that you don't really split that up, right? So pretty much I do restaurants and things like that, all businesses. I'm really excited about Pestrogen Podcast. We're going on our 4th episode, so it's been a lot of fun getting to know Jerusha. But I have kids as well. I've got 2 little girls, and I like to do arts and crafts and stuff with them. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it about me.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much both for joining us. I think it's going to be a huge amount of fun. But Sean, you were just about to launch in with a question there.
Yeah, and when you were saying that, Hugh wanted us to clarify that because we don't get that in the UK. Like, I'm right in thinking you have 2 very different types of pest control. You don't cross the commercial, domestic, and you aren't doing both at the same time or both on the same day, or companies that sort of fit between the 2 or not.
So I don't think that that's necessarily an American thing, because I've worked at 2 companies where everything was mixed. You had a territory, and then whatever was in that territory you did. And so you would do residential and business. But some of the larger companies for pest control do separate it. Sometimes I worked at one place where residential was a completely different branch, and I worked at the commercial branch. And so we weren't even in the same building, but we worked for the same company in the same town. But it's definitely, it kind of depends where you go. There are some smaller companies that only do residential. But we both work for the same company currently, just in different states. And the way that our company does it is it's all within the same branch, but you are either in charge of a residential route or a commercial route. So I also I run a commercial route as well.
Okay, because in the UK it's a bit funny because we'll have what we call our national servicing companies, and that is our Rentokils and Ecolabs and Terminexes. Well, not Terminex in here anymore, but Virgo and bits and bobs like that. And they just don't tend to do any domestic, do they, Sean? I mean, they make the offer. It's available. You can get someone from Rentokil, let's say, in to deal with the rats and mice and crunchy things in your house. But generally, they are not competitive in their pricing. They tend to focus almost exclusively on the commercial contracts.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's almost all of the domestic work's done by micro businesses and SMEs, isn't it, Sean?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. Trying to think of any that. Yeah, we don't have any. Like when I think of my competitors for domestic work around here, I would definitely not think of any of the big ones. You know, not one of them.
Interesting.
You might get the odd person that'll ring rental, but they'll usually be very rich people who just know a brand and don't care about pricing. Like it just simply isn't an issue. But the vast majority of them, yeah, they'll come to SMEs, won't they? And then the big boys just love contracts, don't they? Love them.
And
Makes
to be
sense.
fair, the reason for that is most of the servicing companies, I call them servicing companies over here, it's because they don't just do pest control. They will do washrooms, they will do sanitation, they'll do, I think even Rentokil has its own plants division as well. So they'll sort of like furbish an entire office, and for them, the pest management is part of that package. So they can offer a whole range of things, whereas most micro businesses, most pest controllers in the UK are just focusing on pest control. They'll never be able to go into a Wetherspoons and do everything from, you know, the hand and soap dispensers all the way through to the towel dryers and keep on going. So yeah, it's interesting. It's a slightly different dynamic. And am I right in thinking that you actually have different levels of license as well, depending on, you know, because you've got your structural pests, but is there another level of license for doing commercial and then another level of license for doing that? Could that explain the split, or does your structural pests cover you for domestic and you know, commercial work?
I think that depends on the state a lot. So, like the state that I work in, Ohio, is vastly different. I wouldn't say vastly, but it's different than what Jerusha has to maintain, depending. So, but we do have like a commercial applicator's license.
Awesome. Because we don't have licenses in the UK. This is the funny thing.
Oh.
Everything's done. Yeah, I know. I love this. Every time we talk to any pest manager coming from the States, and we say, hey, you know what? We don't have a license. Now, I didn't mean to do that. I managed to kick the heel on my thing, but that looked kind of cool, didn't it? So we don't have a license in the UK. We have qualifications. Any qualifications are mostly for life. But in order to maintain what's the word I'm looking for? In order to maintain an affiliation with a trade association, let's say, or to continue purchasing rodenticides, then you need to show continued professional development. But
Sure.
largely, the UK is self-stewarded. It's up to, you know, the businesses, it's up to the pest controllers to make sure that they're up to date. You can't have your qualifications taken away. Once you've taken them, that's yours. And so that's it. It's, yeah. So there's
Ours,
yeah.
we have to renew pretty regularly every 3 years where I am. And in my state, you can work unlicensed underneath somebody. And there's different levels of licensure here. So there's something called a qualified supervisor. And then a qualified supervisor can have a certain amount of unlicensed technicians working under their license. But there's a lot more. Most companies want you to get licensed because there's a lot of extra training they have to do. There are certain chemicals that the qualified supervisor would have to be on site for if the unlicensed technician were to apply them. And so you don't technically have to be licensed here, but it's encouraged because, and I am licensed, but we have to redo ours and have the continuing education credits and redo it every couple of years.
So is the license your license or the firm's license? So like if you leave tomorrow, can you set up with that license, or would you have to license yourself?
Mine I can reuse. When I first started, I was in a different state, and the company that you worked for could decide whether it was transferable or not. And so for some companies, when you left, they would say, oh, that's our license. And then you would have to go and retest and restart. And so when I went through, I was brand new, but I was with a gentleman in training who had come from another company, and they had to like call the other company and find out if they were going to let him transfer his license. And luckily for him, he was able to, but it was up to the company at that point in that state.
Yeah.
that feels really immoral.
Kind of shady. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah. Oh.
like
I don't think so.
I went
I don't
from
mind that.
No.
I don't mind. No, if you're an employer and you've paid for someone's license to go through and they've been with you for like 3 months and it lasts 3 years and they go somewhere else and he gets 2 years, 9 months out of them, then I would be like, I'm not paying for that. I'm not
Right.
paying for that.
I was doing structural pest control with a company in my state that I live in, and then for a year, and then I left and I went and did agricultural, so with greenhouse, and that's a separate license as well. So it's like an add-on to the license. I did that for a year in a greenhouse, but during that time when I was in the greenhouse, I got a hold of the state and made sure that all my licenses was under my name and not my previous employer. So then now that I work for the current company that I work for, that they're actually, I drive an hour into the next state. So I'm actually licensed in the state over and not the one I live in. And I've asked them if they'll pay to renew the license that I live in. So I maintain that license myself. So it's weird. It's funky.
Yeah, it seems like an absolute mare's nest, really. But at the same time, I mean, we mention licensing in the same way that you talk about Beetlejuice, isn't it? We mustn't mention it more than 3 times, otherwise all the gremlins come out. Because in the UK, it's a bone of contention. I'm sure actually you'll see people in the comments. Some people will be saying, hey, no, not a license, more paperwork, can't be dealing with it. You're not to tell me what I've been doing for the last... Yeah, no, there we go. Straight off the back, Hugh saying don't need a license, Terry saying absolutely about time we had licensing in. It's such a dividing topic at the moment in the UK. We're literally as well re-looking at doing our qualifications framework to bring it more in line with the rest of the EHOs and the public health practitioners and the other bits and bobs like that, and that's causing all manner of headaches.
That's not true. That's not true. That's the excuse. The truth is that they let farmers become professionals in 2 hours. That's what happened. So now they're shitting the pants because we've got 6 million professionals in 2 hours. So they're like, you could do a little bit more to be professional, and we'll tell you it's in your interest. Alex and his pals done that. So I just wanted to stress that. Don't listen to his rubbish.
No,
Not true.
not Alex and his pals. That's bollocks. Basically, our current qualification is at a level 2, and if you look at a level 2 in, let's say, food safety, you can do it in 30 minutes online. Whereas our level 2 takes a week's worth of intensive lectures and then a fairly comprehensive exam at the end. So the idea is to try and differentiate ourselves as professionals from this sort of half a day, 1 day course. And because at the moment, if we turn around to someone in the food industry and say, I'm level 2 qualified, for us, that's a big thing. For them, they're like, I'm pretty certain I can do that online. So it's trying to have that sort of differentiation a bit in there. But less about qualifications. I would actually really like to know, just as a starting point, how you guys got into pest management, because it's such a wonderful industry and it's so varied and it's so sort of rewarding, but so few people manage to find their way to it. It's a bit disheartening. So it'd be really nice to hear how you guys took that journey to find pest management.
For me, my brother got into the industry about the same time that I went to cosmetology school to do hair, and he just all along told me that I should go and do pest control, but I was very much a girly girl and would just always tell him no, I would run away from the spiders and the mice. I don't think I could do that. And so I worked in the salon for 12 years, and all along he would just constantly be telling me, you got to come do this. You got to come do this. And so he ended up moving up the ranks and was in a pretty high position at a pest control company. And I think at this point he's been in the industry for 20 years. And so he just always would encourage me. Our sister actually went and became a heat technician and was doing bed bug work all the way I think she did that for like 8 years, maybe. And so it got to a point where I didn't really love doing hair anymore, and it wasn't paying very well. And so I was working multiple jobs. I wasn't really seeing my family. I wasn't making great money, even with 2 jobs. And so I saw that his company was hiring in my area, and he'd been telling me for 12 years to go work there. So I was kind of just thinking about it on my own. And then he was like, I don't know why you wouldn't come do this, get the vehicle, get really good pay. And then, it's usually Monday through Friday, nights and weekends off. And I'm a single mom. So that was a pretty big deal with children. So I went to the interview, still kind of not very sure I could do it. And had a good time, had a good conversation with the gentleman that I was interviewing with. And when the guy called me to offer me the job, he told me that he really wanted to hire me, but that he was unsure because I was a little bit too girly. And so at that point I was like, well, now I have to take the job, and I have to be like the best technician this dude has ever encountered. So I started training, and for me, it was still very much like fake it till you make it. Like the first time I saw a mouse on my first day and definitely wanted to like run away screaming, but knew that I couldn't cry in front of the boys. So I just powered through with just kind of a chip on my shoulder. And once I
thought you were going to say I powered through and smashed its head in or something like that. It's going to go, no.
I did. I mean, I did have to. I did learn how to kill a mouse pretty shortly thereafter. But I powered through the training in the field, and then I went to 3 weeks of classroom training. And the more that I learned about the pests, it was just so fascinating to me. And it really, having that basic biology and that understanding of what they're after, what they're trying to do, why they're where they are, it really took the fear out of it for me. And now I honestly can't imagine doing anything else for a career. I just really love the industry. I love feeling like I'm making a difference in my customers' lives. And I love walking into a business and not being the person that they're expecting to see, and then like owning it, solving their problems, and like changing people's minds and showing them that like just because I'm a girl and I wear makeup doesn't mean I can't be a badass and bash some mouse heads in.
Send those little mice off to Jesus. But that's it. It's interesting to hear that, and I've got some things I definitely want to wheel back to in a second. But I think it's only fair that we give Jenny a chance to let us know how she got into it.
So I was working in a manufacturing facility, and I actually really liked it. Was making decent money, but during the pandemic, they announced that they were going to be closing. So I started looking for jobs, and I had just purchased a brand new vehicle, and I saw the listing online, and I was like, oh my goodness, a company vehicle, that'd be amazing. I can just save all the miles on my personal car, which now years later, that car is still doing very well. So that's nice. But so I gave it a go. I had no inclination of, I didn't know anybody in it, nothing. I just jumped in heads first. But I think back to when I was a kid and stuff, my mom used to say that, do you even live here? Because I like to be gone. I like adventure. So I think that's what really kept me in it, was that I like the adventure, especially with the first company I worked for, because they didn't have a set route for anybody. So every day your route was likely somewhere new, and they would even send me far away or whatnot. But I had a couple clients I saw back to back, but that's really how I got into it, was that the place I worked at, where'd it go? They were closing. So I just had to find a job. So I know that's kind of rare for people to be just like, oh, I'm just going to get into it, but that's how it happened.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Pest management is one of those. So in the UK, a lot of people who come to pest management, it's a second job or a third job. It's something you come to much later on in life, with exceptions of myself, who I look older than I actually am because I had a tough old babe around. But everyone you speak to that comes into pest management a little bit later on is always like, I wish I had come to this job first. I wish I'd come to this industry first. I wish I'd come into this before I had spent all of that time traveling down that dead end path and getting to that point. And so it's nice to hear that, you know, it's similar for you guys. You know, you did other things first and then found pest management, and it's one of the, you're either in it for 5 minutes, you either make it, you know, through your first year, and if you make it through your first year where you've seen all of the different things a year's got to give you, then you're in it. Then you're in it forever. Yeah. There's no walking away from it there. And I think, Jenny, like one of the things you said that's really resonated with me, and I think a lot of people listening, is it's the puzzle aspect. You're driving the same route every day. You're dealing with the same, you know, pests. You know, you might only specialize in rats, mice, and moles, but you'll never go and you'll never find the same problem twice in a row. Be similar. You have similar tools, and that's how you get your knowledge and your behavior and experience through, but it's never the same puzzle to fit. And I think that's a huge drive for a lot of people. It's just so unique. I think that's what a lot of people miss. You know, you sit at a computer all day filling out spreadsheets, and I know for a fact that is destroying.
Yeah.
With that, there we go. I don't know, Sean, just for a bit of fun, do you want to, you know, give us the high level of how you got in? Or
me, I just had a natural proclivity for bashing mice's brains in. I'm only joking, I didn't. Yeah, no, I was always that kid that was out hunting, shooting, fishing, and then it just kept going. Am I echoing now, or since I've come off that, has that stopped?
No, it's stopped. It's stopped now, yeah. So we got it.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah. So that was that. But where do you want to go in pest control?
Where to go in pest control?
That's not at me. Yeah.
Yeah. Used to. Yeah.
I really don't have the desire to start my own company. That's kind of the progression a lot of people here have, is, you know, you work for another company for several years until you're ready to go out on your own. I don't have that desire. I want to kind of go more towards the entomology side. We've got another one, Alex. Got another one that likes to play with bugs. What's wrong with these people?
That's a little bit of background for you two. Sean, his favorite thing in the world is when I start talking about entomology, specifically either medical or parasitology. I mean, his face just lights up.
Bugs. Why is everyone like bugs? They're boring, they're rubbish, they're dirty, they're scruffy, they're horrible. Like, why are we messing on with bugs? Everyone loves bugs. I don't get when people get excited because they know that one bug has like a tuberosity on its third back leg or something like that. I'm like, so fucking what? Just spray it and move on.
You know what I love about bugs? I love how there are so many different bug societies where the men are just there for mating, and then after that they don't matter anymore, and that's just that's just a societal structure I can get behind, and you find it so much in the bug world.
Might I introduce you to the anglerfish? I think you'd really get on quite well with
that.
Yes,
the anglerfish is so freaking cool. The boy is like teeny tiny and just attaches itself to the woman, and then is like just part of her after mating. It's just the coolest thing in the world.
So what you're saying is you want a society, so just to check on this, you want a society that would just turn up, mate, and then we leave.
Yeah.
Isn't that like, haven't we cracked the code? Don't have to talk to them afterwards, don't have to provide them with a house. Boom, boom. I might be a bug.
We don't need it.
Go off into the woods and slowly perish afterwards. Like, what could be?
Wow.
But okay. I will say, in America, men are a little bit more disappointing. So,
oh God,
not like us good English men, Alex. Not like us good English.
I'm sure you guys are lovely. I just
you've
think
made
bugs
Sean's
are
evening.
really cool, and I would like to work into that and do more. My favorite thing is training. So I'd like to be part of like creating training programs, going a little bit more in depth, because I came from a company that had just a phenomenal training program. I think they actually started selling their training program because it was so good. And I remember I went to the testing center for my first licensure, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. And the guy there was like, oh, you're with that company. You're going to ace this. Like, you're not going to have any trouble. You guys are trained so well. And I was like, yeah, I've been sitting in a classroom just reading for 3 weeks. And the guy behind me was like, they handed me a book and told me to figure it out. I was like,
that was my first company.
Yeah. So I'd like to get into that. I think that it is such a cool industry. I've seen technicians go through and work for a really big company, and they were not well trained and they were not well prepared, and they had a horrible experience. And so I would like to get into the entomology side and not like lose the rodent stuff either, but I'd like to use that to work my way into training and creating training materials and things along those lines.
It's incredibly rewarding as training. It's one of the things I enjoy the most, because from all of those levels, from that foundational level of sort of like people just coming in fresh faced, where you can terrify them with, everything from mouse poop ranging all the way to sort of like, and this is a tick. And just watching people sort of like respond to that. I used to run a place called Church Farm many years ago, and we had these great big pens of rodents down there, hundreds of rats living in these great big open air pens. And there's one company whose name I'll not mention, but they used to bring down all of their new starters, and they'd be like, right, do a 1-day lecture.
No, it wasn't Rentokil.
It wasn't Rentokil. Bring down all their new starters. It was not.
Virgo.
You won't guess it. No, it's not. Son of a gun. They'd bring down their new starters and they'd say, right, give them the spiel, and then after lunch, send them in with the rats and see how they respond. And all the area managers will come down for the day, because this was like their open day, and they'd be like stood the other side of the window looking through. And of course there would be some people walk in and be like, this is amazing, having a look, bopping about, and there'll be some people stood pencil straight, like, this is absolutely terrifying, and be like, okay, yeah, they're probably not the ones that are going to make the cut. It was a really good sort of like litmus test to see how many of these sort of like newbies were going to make it through and make it out the end of the year. So it was always good fun to watch people do that. But there we go.
Go on, Jenny. Tell them what you're going to do.
So I am in school right now for a public health degree. I really like doing the commercial side. So along with what I've been doing this past year, I work alongside health inspectors a lot, and that's kind of what made me change my major to public health. But eventually I would like to go out on my own or partner with someone, but I would really like to focus in on commercial, because that's probably one of my greatest passions. I really love walking into a restaurant and hearing, oh, Mama Jen's here because we haven't cleaned our drains. Run, panic, because they know that I really care about them and I care about their business. And the only reason I'm bringing up the things that need done around is to improve their business. So I really get a kick out of that. So that's structural pest control with a company. So, yeah.
So here's a question, Jen. Would you rather deal with rats in a restaurant or insects in a restaurant?
Oh, probably rodents. Depending. It really depends on the type of building, but I would say I do a lot more follow-ups with insects just because of a lot of monitoring and things like that. But I don't know. It really depends. Either one could be bad, especially when it does come to like a restaurant or a food manufacturing facility or something like that. I'd probably rather deal with the rodent side because I tend to have a quicker knockdown on that. It depends. Yeah.
Here's a question, and because this is something that's actually not just UK, US. This is a global sort of like thing that's happening at the moment. Is there is becoming a greater trend. People are getting more and utilizing traps more. What I'm basically saying is, where do you guys sit on the split of when it comes to rodents, especially in inside buildings? What's your go-to? Do you use a lot of trapping first, or do you still sort of like lean into chemicals? And which chemicals do you go to first? Because it's a fairly obvious question, but it's quite a nuanced one, because there's 4 people here, and I guarantee everyone will give a different answer as to what their go-to would be. So what's the opinion with your companies out in the States at the moment? What would be your go-to first when you're doing rodent control?
Where I work right now, we are not allowed to just start with chemical. We really do have to focus on IPM, and so it is a lot more trapping. Personally, I think if you're using it correctly, if you're using the correct equipment, following the label, and doing everything by the book, I would prefer to be able to use chemical. I have instances where I actually have a restaurant right now that is absolutely infested, and I mean I'll catch 100 mice a month. And it's the area that the building is in, it's the shape of the building. They're not necessarily the cleanest, and they're not super willing to make fixes, and so they're just everywhere. We catch mice in places you wouldn't, like in coolers where you wouldn't normally have mice hanging out because of how cold it is. I catch mice in there all the time. And we were just trapping and just wasn't really getting anywhere. And my company, again, is not real big on chemicals. But with the owner's permission, I was allowed to finally introduce rodenticide, and again, using it in the correct placements, in the correct areas, following the label to the letter. I've gone from catching 49. I'm doing, I go there every 2 weeks right now, and I would catch 49-ish, right around there. That was kind of my average in 2 weeks. And I introduced rodenticide, and I haven't caught a mouse in, I think we're at like 3 months now. So personally, awesome. I prefer to be able to use rodenticide, because I do feel like, dependent on the building and the situation, I think that they can outmate your trapping efforts. And sometimes just that little bit of an extra push of using a chemical can just completely turn things around.
Yeah, and I think this is something where IPM is not misused, but misunderstood. And forgive me for speaking out of when people give that escalation approach, you must start with the non-toxic non-chemical, and the lethal non-chemical, and then the lethal chemicals.
Yeah,
people get. Yeah, I've worked with chemicals all of my life. I obviously have a preference, but in my mind, people see each of those stages as separate and independent. You try one, it doesn't work. You move on to the next. You try it, it doesn't work. You move on to the next. There's absolutely nothing saying you can't do, hey, let's do all 3 at the same time. And, in some areas where you're having problems with uptake and engagement, all right, you put traps down in a way that, and Sean can speak for hours as to sort of like capturing rodents by looking at nothing more than the runs that they make and the paths that they take. No need for lures, no need for anything like that. You simply use the animal's locomotion against it. In other areas, you're going to have issues with that, with aversion and shyness, and use them all at the same time. So this sort of like stratified IPM can sometimes work a little bit against us. What we need to do is integrated risk management, where we take the risks of the site and we use all of the tools at the same time. Says, right, that's me done. I'll stop on my little soapbox.
Tell us about your thoughts on traps versus rodenticides.
Yes.
So my go-to would be doing a rodenticide on the outside, of course, and then, but the IPM, which I thought I was listening to Pest Perspectives with Sean, my good buddy Sean, and I noticed he was saying proofing a lot, which I've always heard it more like exclusion here. But my first go-to is to look around and see what I can personally seal for them, and give them an action plan. Like, let's get this place tidied up so that, and then based on where we go with that will be where I put my traps. I like getting creative with the traps, even using zip ties in certain spots and just trying to get into the mind of the rodents. So, but I do really like the rodenticide on the exteriors. It's especially like with what Jerusha said, depending on the location, like some locations just have such a high push. There's like a lake over there and, you know, what have you. So I really like the exterior rodenticides. But when it comes to trapping, it depends on the building.
We hear this a lot. I think this is a big difference between the States and the UK. That we tend to use rodenticides internally and traps externally. And I can never, and to be fair, we do get technicians over here who'll say, oh, I use bait, rat problem coming through the drains. They'll say, oh, well, I'll use bait in the drains and I'll use traps in the house because I don't want a bad smell. And I'm thinking, what? You think the fucking rat that's in the drains eating the bait isn't the same one that's getting caught on the trap in the house, you knobhead? Like, it's still eating it. It can still die there. Like, and there's this thing, isn't it? Like, if we bait it outside, it's okay. It won't die in the house. Like, it's the same pest. It's the same thing that's traveling around. Like, if you're gonna bait it outside, me personally, we bait loads inside. We bait 1,000 times more inside than outside, and very rarely do we ever come across a problem. But I'm also very conscious that might be buildings problems, whereas your houses are put together different to ours, aren't they?
Yeah. So we've got like crawl spaces and things like that. So I think it really does depend, because sometimes on the interior I'll find the fluorescent droppings of rodents that ate the bait from the exterior. So like you said, they got in anyway and they're dying somewhere in there. So yeah, I don't know. But I do believe the structures are built differently. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look in the UK, not to. I love this expression that I heard a little while back, which was in the UK we consider 100 years to be a short time and 100 miles to be a long way, and in the States you consider 100 miles to be a short distance and 100 years to be a long time. There is a post box in my parents' village which is older than some of your towns and cities. I mean, and so we have constructions and we have buildings that actually span literal centuries, and buildings have changed. We've changed the way we've made buildings many times. You've got the Victorian, lots of Victorian and Edwardian structures. You even have some old sort of like Tudor structures, and then you move forwards and you've got everything that was just before the war, and then we have the war. It knocked a lot of shit down, and we have everything after the war, and then everything 90s onwards changed again with building regs and plans. So we have a whole smorgasbord of different things. You can have terraced houses where all of that terraced house or row of terraced houses all connected underneath sprung floors at the bottom, or all have a shared attic, and so pests will move from one side to the other, and there we go.
Just want to bring something up quick. Hang on a second. Brad Harvey says, when are we going to be on? Lol, I'll behave. I can't speak for Jack. If you're going to behave, you can't come on. But Jack, I'm going to take you back to something Brad Harvey said earlier on, folks. Wants to come on a podcast after saying, stand by, what is it? The room has just got a lot more attractive when the girls turned up. So not only is he called we're ugly, but he's told her that he's going to behave. So yeah, the room just got a lot better looking, I think was what he said. So Brad, maybe another time. I don't know. We'll see, Jack. I'm sure we'll get you on at some point, mate.
That's Tales from the Crawl Space.
Brad and Jack would be excellent guests. That would be a great episode.
Yeah.
That's how we met.
Well, while we're talking about podcasts. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That's how we met, was we were guests
on their
Tales from the
podcast.
Crawl Space. Yep.
So you did
Both at the same time, or one after another?
We
What's
did
that?
well. I mean, we knew of each other, but we had never spoken before. And then we went on Tales from the Crawl Space.
And
Afterwards,
then like a week later, she was like, "Hey, do you want to do a podcast?" And I was like, "Fuck yes, I do." But like, yeah, we've only known each other. We've only really been chatting for a couple of months.
yeah,
So
it's
it's
just
been fun.
Yeah, it's just happened to be that we work for the same company in different states and stuff, and we're really hitting it off. I'm really enjoying getting to know Jerusha. So
Yeah, it's been a blast.
It's a journey in many ways. This is like a multi-level, storytelling adventure. I love this. It kind of does segue very nicely onto podcasts. And of course, you guys have your own podcast. And I think it'd be remiss of me if we didn't address the very, title headline banner there, Pestrogen. So which of you two would like to sort of like talk us through how you got to Pestrogen? Where did this start?
That's definitely Jenny.
So actually, Brad Harvey is the one who coined the term Pestrogen. So, and then Jack Starry from Tales from the Crawlspace as well. They had that episode, and the episode we were on was called the Pestrogen episode. So it was myself, Jerusha, and a couple other ladies. And so then afterwards, I'm like, I really like the name Pestrogen. This is awesome. So with the help of Tales from the Crawlspace, kind of Pestrogen was born. But before the podcast was born was the Facebook group. So there are women groups out there for pest control specialists, but they're kind of a little like uppity, put on your dress suit and prance around like you're better than everybody kind of thing. So what we decided when we recruited a couple mods and we created the Pestrogen Facebook group is that it's a casual group for women to get together, like a support group. So there's really no like, you can come in there and you can vent, you can whatever, and it's hands down, we're going to support you. This isn't a gloat about who's better and whose company is cooler or anything like that. So the group began first, and then when I realized that we had a lot we could talk about was when I was actually talking to Jack Starry from Tales from the Crawlspace. He and Jerusha have a really close relationship, and she had done a TikTok for a long time. What's your TikTok called, Jerusha? What's your name?
Your Pesty Bestie.
Yes. So and I think that's how you and Jack Starry met, right? Or how he reached out.
Yep. So they have another Facebook group, the Pest Control Humor Depot, and I was already a member in there. But I post on TikTok a little bit of everything, but a lot of work stuff. And Jack found a video of like a black widow or something that I had posted and reached out and invited me to the Facebook group. And I was like, oh no, I'm a member. I'm just like a quiet member. And from there, he and I started talking, and he invited me to be on their podcast, Tales from the Crawlspace. So we did I'm the OG Woman in Pest Control. We did the first Women in Pest Control episode for them. And then I think it was a year and a half, almost 2 years later, when they invited us on for, I think, the third Women in Pest Control episode. And that's how Jenny and I ended up meeting.
Yes. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then you started Pestrogen. Well, you had the Pestrogen Facebook page, and then you started the podcast from the Facebook page, or you
basically, yeah. So it was we grabbed a group of ladies that basically I reached out to a bunch of ladies that I knew that were really supportive and that I think would be a really great role for that group. And Jerusha was one of them. And then as we went and the group's growing, we only have 180 some members right now, but we want to really grow it. We have big plans for the group itself beyond just a Facebook group. So, and then as I realized that there's a very unique female perspective to pest control was when I finally reached out to Jerusha and was like, hey, we should do a podcast. And I did check out her TikTok and stuff, and I'm so glad that she's super charismatic, because anytime anybody messages me anything about our podcast, it's like, oh my goodness, it was so funny when Jerusha said blah. And I'm like, whew, good thing I have her. So, yeah.
I just talk a lot of useless bullshit, but it's fun.
It's great.
both be pleased to know, talking, Pestrogen Podcast, and I started a TikTok years ago when I started up my consultancy. I was like, I'll start a TikTok, and I put like 3 videos on it and never really took it any further. But I would all like to tell you the inspired name that I had for my TikTok. It was called, wait for it, Pesticles. And I kind of wish I
That's
kept
pretty
on going
good.
with that now.
I like that. That's
Yeah.
Better
That's
than the
pretty
fake
good.
testosterone.
yeah. All the
Yeah,
guys
it
that
is,
the guys that didn't like that we were doing our own thing, our Pestrogen, were like, well, we're gonna start Pestosterone, but Pesticles, I like that. That's a little bit more creative.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Exactly, taking it right to the pesticles there. So
Great.
it's interesting because I was saying just before we started this that we can see all the metrics from our podcast and from the different channels and the rest of it, and probably only about 20% of our viewership is female. They'll watch, and that's probably actually quite representative of the UK. I think, as far as we can tell, it's about 15% of the UK pest managers are women. So with that, I mean, so what you said, there's some unique takes on pest control from your perspective. So just talk us through some of those. I mean, that'd be really interesting.
I'm always told that I'm a little bit more detail oriented and thorough, and that I don't know. I feel like I women just. I think the emotionality, especially if I'm doing residential or walking in somewhere where somebody's just overstimulated, a little stressed out with the issue, I think that women just tend to have a better bedside manner, and not in every case, but I do think that there's something to be said about that. I think that we sometimes see things that maybe men would miss. And I know I've been in the situation several times where a guy has walked past something 10 times and I walk past it once and see it. I think we're just a little bit more like detail oriented, like I said. So I do feel like that helps a ton in this industry. And then I think that relating to people comes a little bit more naturally to us. And I've definitely had instances doing residential where the homeowner, or usually it's the wife that calls pest control because, the husband's been saying like, I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it. And she finally is like, no, I've had enough. I'm calling. When a woman walks in, I feel like they're immediately a little bit more comfortable. I've had instances where I was talking to a young girl one time. Her mom was at work and couldn't be home. And so she called her mom and was talking, and her mom was like, oh, I guess you can call your uncle and tell him he doesn't come over. He doesn't have to come over because you're going to be safe, because they thought that, some random man doing pest control was going to go over there. And they didn't feel comfortable with the 18-year-old girl being home alone with him. And I walked in and they were like, oh, okay, I guess, maybe I'm not going to be murdered today. So unfortunately, just that's how I get in, and then I sneak them from behind. But I think it just the world we live in, I think people just trust us a little bit easier, quicker, and let their guard down a little bit more with us. So they'll be, sometimes you have those customers that aren't fully telling you the whole truth, aren't honest with you. I think with us, they drop their guard a little bit and are less nervous to be alone with us and tell us the entire situation that's going on.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like I said, with a lot of my accounts, I feel like I'm seen in a motherly role in a lot of them, because I have a way of being able to be kind of stern when a situation is serious, but in a loving way. So, and then when it comes to like severe cases of like delusional parasitosis or anything like that, I have a very kind heart when it comes to that. And there's been situations where I've been able to help them get a hold of family members or something that can help address the situation. So I think when it comes to being a female in that way, it comes a little more natural. Also, like, I'm super short, so like people instantly look at me and think like, she's harmless. She's half my size. So, so like Jerusha said, they aren't like, you're scary or anything. So.
Sorry, it's funny that you mentioned the height thing, and for no other reason than I was on a on the farm event day last year, and I bumped into what can only be described as the tallest, largest, broadest human being I have ever met. You know, oak trees would just crumple before. He was huge. And I jokingly said to him, how on earth do you get into an attic? And he was like, oh, I have a pet midget. And he turned around and his mate literally was like, because you just stood next to him. What do you do? Just yeet Sky through the loft hatch and be like, laters, Trevor, I'll pick you up when you're done. So yeah, there you go. Sometimes it is really useful in pest management to have someone who is a little bit more petite, because you can just parcel them into the gaps where you just can't.
Exactly. Yeah. Like crawl spaces and stuff. I got you.
Sorry, this is a running joke. Alex is like Gimli. Thank you, Hugh, for people watching back to this. Yeah, I have been likened on more than one occasion to the adorable dwarf from Lord in the Rings. So there we go. You've got giants and
they call my nickname is Hobbit. So
well, there we go. So between the two of us, I think we should go and have an adventure somewhere. You know, just go find an active volcano. What could go possibly wrong?
Yeah, don't worry. I got snacks.
Second breakfast is under control.
This sounds like my kind of adventure straight away, just to the fridge. I can see Sean's brewing with a couple of questions.
No, I'm just enjoying listening to you. There's every now and again we get guests on where it's just nice to sit and listen. Like I've had a few Americans on, but I haven't had any American ladies on. It's nice to listen to your mindset on what you believe make you different and stuff. I don't agree with any of it, but fucking don't. But it's nice to listen to it.
The other guys here, that's fine.
You'll find with me, I'm just brutally honest, so I don't agree with it, but I enjoy it and I like listening to it. It's fun. It is. No, it is. Go have this. It's interesting to see how you perceive yourself. And I would imagine, and I'm sure, and people say this all the time, someone says to me, if you could see what other people see in you, you'd be surprised. And we never see that, do we? We believe we have this, what they're, and I would love to speak to your customers to say, what is it you like about Jen and what is it you like about Jerusha? And I bet you'd be gobsmacked, because we've done it with the lads before, and like what customers pick up on, what we pick up on, what other people pick up on it. And I love the self-awareness that people have, and and where you're at. So I like listening to people's experiences, because whether we're right or wrong, the experience is the experience, and that's formed that mindset, hasn't it? So something's happened to make. I think that, to be fair, I do agree with a lot with women are fucking a lot more accurate with the paperwork. Like a lot more accurate in there, from what I can see, a lot more accurate in there. That minute detail, which is very nice, isn't it? I definitely agree with that bit. Lads can be a lot more slapdash, can't they? Like, fucking done, dead, move, killed it, next. Settle down, lads.
Just go.
Down. Yeah.
Hose the euthanasia brick off in the back of the van and on to the next one.
I've got that same with my two lads. I repeat it to them time after time. I'll say to them, where's the money? And they'll go, it's in the paperwork. Because if I didn't, they just wouldn't fucking do it.
Yeah.
It's dead. Let's move. Like, no. We have to do the important bit the customer sees. Let's fill in the paperwork, shall we? Let's give them what they've paid for. Like, we've got a dead rat. What more can they want? Like, yeah, all right, whatever. Fucking nowhere, boys.
See,
my first supervisor always told me that if you didn't write it down, you didn't do it. So I'm super meticulous in my paperwork, because I just want credit and I want them to know how incredible I am. So I'm going to remind them, by the way, I did,
you like this then. You like this little story. I was a police officer, and before when the bloke who took me through training school, he was involved in a massive case, and basically someone got set alight and died, and blah blah blah. And when he went to court, he went to court, and they were going through the inquest and all that, and they were asking him questions about what happened, and he explained it, and they said, "Where did you write that?" And he went, "Well, I didn't." And they just looked at him and went, "Didn't happen." Like, if you made no notes about it, if you didn't write it, it didn't fucking happen. Like, write it down. If you did that, put it down. I say it to the lads all the time. But we also say to them, they've got to write down what they did do that didn't get a positive response. I think as pest controllers, we're too wrong. You know, you go outside and you check outside and there's no entry points. So they don't write that in. And you're like, it's 3 points in it. It's 3 points. Went outside, done an external inspection, didn't find anything. It helps you inside. Like, just because it wasn't, don't just write down the positive finds, write down everything you did. And I do agree, women are a lot better at that side of it, like going through that process and getting that paperwork and that accuracy a lot better, aren't they? A lot better.
I think that it does, and that kind of does. In a way, it's reflected again in the UK industry that you find a lot more of the certified field biologist roles, a lot more of the technical inspector roles, and the surveyor roles. You know, that split goes from 80-20 to probably a bit more even at that point, because obviously more people then move up, like detail orientated. That's their bit, that's their sweet spot, that's the bit they fall into. I can't talk, you know, I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but I wouldn't be surprised if that wasn't very close to the numbers we're looking at. But one thing I would like to know, you know, the time is ticking down, but I would love to know from you guys just what do you think is the biggest misconception for young women getting into our industry? What do you think is that barrier? Why are we stuck at that 15% when we've got people here who are saying how fantastic pest management is and how, you know,
Can I give a second part of that question before you answer it though? Is 15% the right thing? I don't hang around with girls. I don't go out on trips with 10 girls, and you probably have spent a lot more time with them. Out of your friends, if you looked at them, their natural inclination towards doing something like this, because it's all, and this is one of my problems I have with it, we turn around and we say, oh yeah, we should get more of them in, if they don't want to be in, like, you've got to get the people that want to be there in it. It's like, shouldn't we have more men in fucking beauty? Like, they don't want to be there. And I think it's right. If do you think we have a problem that women are not coming in who want to be in, or do they just not want to be in? And then if they are, how do we get them in?
I think it's probably a mix of both. I know a lot of people that I talk to always say like, oh, I don't know how you do it. I'm so afraid of spiders, which that was my own, you know, my brother, it took me 12 years of him talking me to get into this industry before I finally gave it a shot. And I just thought that, my fear of and my aversion of pests was too much to overcome. And so I really did think that, like, oh my God, I'm going to see a mouse and I'm going to be too scared to do anything about it.
Smash the head in.
Yeah. So I think that's probably a big holdup for a lot of people. And it's just, even for men, it's really not an industry that gets a lot of chatter. You know, once you're in the industry, then you start finding a lot of people that have experience, or you start talking to people about it. But really, I don't think that anybody fully knows what they're getting into with this industry, because we do work very solo. I know, at least for me doing commercial work, I try to be unseen a lot of places. I don't want to be out in the open in front of customers, because they think if they see us, there must be a problem. They don't understand preventative. And so I feel like I don't think that very much is known about the industry, period. But then for women, even less so, because it's just not something that's ever really offered to you as a career option unless you know somebody. It's, you know, it's not like when I was at the salon, nobody was like, oh, you should go try doing pest control. I just happened to have a brother that was in pest control. So I think a lot of it is just that people assume that they can't do it because they don't like spiders or they don't like mice. And then also just, it's not really marketed as like a great career for women. You really have to experience it or know somebody that's doing it before you really have a clue what's going on the day to day.
Agreed. So I agree that we shouldn't be like forcing women in, right? But I think that there would be way more women that would be interested in it if they realized that it was something that they could exceed in. Because like being a short little lady myself, I do walk in, like, yes, there's some places I walk into and they're like, whew, thank goodness no man's gonna beat me up and whatever, you know. But at the same time, when I walk in some places, it's like, who is this little girl? She's not going to fix our problem, you know? So then I have this hurdle to jump over immediately just based on who I am. So that, I think that is a huge deterrent for women in the industry, because to have to battle that all day long is hard. I've ran the same route now for 1 year. A lot of the accounts are the same, a lot of the managements and stuff. I'm just now feeling like a lot of the leadership or points of contacts in these locations have accepted the fact that I am qualified to do the job. So that's a long time of day in and day out of being looked down on. So I think that's a huge reason why women don't get in the industry, is because that's a lot of mental load to take for a whole year. When you wake up and start stomping the pavement and go to, whereas like the guy that ran my route before me, he's now my service manager, super tall guy, older, wise. So they were used to him, and they have this presumption that, oh, you know, it's a man, he's going to handle the job, whatever. So I think that's a big reason why women don't get into it. So kind of with what we're doing with Pestrogen is having a group where women can feel safe in, because a lot of the Facebook groups for pest control, if there's one lady I'm thinking of in general, she went to one of the pest control professional groups on Facebook, posted a question and just got ridiculed instantly. And whereas when she comes to Pestrogen, and it was a lot of gender focused insults, like, who's this little girl thinking, and not only that, but her business name was a very feminine name. It was like Pink something. So then, you know, people are just instantly ridiculing her. So what we're doing with Pestrogen,
I think we have on as a guest.
Yeah. Oh, no,
Pink Panther.
Yeah,
I don't know, maybe, but there's a lot of those. But it's with what we're doing with Pestrogen is we want it to be a safe space for ladies to come. But not only that, is we're building it up to be something that will help offer training and stuff, because not all of our, like Jerusha said earlier, not all of our employers offer the greatest training and stuff too. So that can instantly knock a lady out of the park that just doesn't want to deal with this industry anymore. They get into it, they're faced with all that, they don't get the training. So yeah,
You might have seen me sort of like raise an eyebrow, but it's so strange and disheartening that it's the general public's view, the general public, you know, the thing that makes a good pest controller is that they're scary, and the thing that makes a bad pest controller is that they're approachable. And that just seems to be completely, it's like people almost miss the point as to what pest management is. People just assume, and we all joked about, you know, sending the little rats off to Jesus, and, you know, what was your first job? It's having to sort of like go, but, you know, it's a very sort of like selective humor that we have, but we all understand that it is an element of humor. And I think we all approach our jobs with an element of compassion and understanding for that animal. We're not just windmilling in there with 2 breeze blocks and a can-do attitude. Like, genuinely, we are out there to try and do this job as effectively and as humanely as possible. And it's just quite a sad sort of like realization that, as you're saying out in the States, the thing that makes a good pest manager is what makes most people afraid of human beings. And you know, why can't we have both? You know, why can't you be good and nice at the same time? And it's a bit of a shame. I mean, Sean, you've done a lot more sort of like you know, I've been at the manufacturing and distribution and more. You've been a lot more sort of like on the coal face. Have you found this, you know, is this a reflection of the UK industry?
I think, no, definitely not. I think what you are describing, and I'm sure ladies do go through it, but it might be comforting to know that my lads went through exactly the same thing when they started. I had this conversation with them like lots of times where they'd come back and they go, Sean, they just want you. They just want you. And it was more, people don't like change, I think. But the one thing that I found helped massively was the way I answered the phone to them. So rather than I would tell them, I'd say, oh, by the way, Dale's coming to, he's a great lad, he knows what he's doing. He's a big old lump, but don't worry about it. He's a nice kid and you'll get on with him, no bother. And then just telling them, I can remember a lady doing a talk on the Uberification of pest control, and she said something like, don't really care if he's a serial murderer as long as they know who it is, what time he's going to turn up, and blah blah blah. So I was like, right. So I just started telling them who it was that was coming before the person arrived, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, you're Dale, are you? You're Ellis, are you? And yeah, I would absolutely massively disagree with the thought that people believe pest control is a big and scary, because we get lots and lots and lots of comments and reviews because my lads are quite sensitive boys. People really like that, you know. Dale in particular, he's very caring, you know. But the one thing I would say is, for certain, you do need that. You do need that as a boss looking down at staff. You need that balance. So there'll be jobs where it'll come in. I'll be like, Dale is definitely the most caring out of all of us. Like, definitely 1,000,000%. I'll be like, Dale, I think that's a job for you. And he'll come back, he'll be like, yeah, like you couldn't have sent you or Ellis. And in the same breath, there's jobs where it's like, Ellis, that's definitely a job for you. Like, go fucking murder that. And he's like, got it, boss, fucking wallet, you know. And we definitely need them different approaches for different customers. Like, you can't have one or the other. Like, certain people just take the piss out of Dale at the minute. I know they would. And then there's other people who wouldn't, particularly like Alice's quiet, sort of murderous type behaviour. But then certain people love it. You know, you chuck him into agricultural world, he flourishes. You chuck him into the care home of the old lady, he flourishes. I just think you need that big, broad spectrum, and you need to be able to put the right technicians in the right jobs at the right time. I don't think there is a right technician. I think there's you know, we all suit different roles, I think.
I think you have to, I just had this conversation with a customer the other day too. I think you, as a technician, also have to know what your customer is expecting of you. So like if I go to a little old lady's house, I'm going to act one way, but I have a restaurant where they speak to each other, screaming, cussing, and the owner never said a word to me until I started kind of yelling, cussing right back at him. And so we were kind of, and I mean, now I won him over by saying like, hey, you're fucking shit up. You're making my job harder. What the fuck? And they were like, oh my God, you know, and, but I would never walk into like little old Gladys's house and be talking that way. So I think
please do. I just want to understand.
Depends on how Gladys treats me. Maybe I might, but but I think to be successful, you have to know the difference and when to be which kind of technician for which customer.
I tell you the reason why I asked about the 15% thing and whether they've got the right percentage or not. When it was just me and Alice were thinking about taking someone on, and we were actively trying to find a woman because me and Alice are not that person, and we knew we weren't. And fuck me, couldn't get one. Not for love nor money. Like, not for love nor money. So it wasn't that we didn't want, we were actively like, we're talking, they'll go, not for me, not for me, not for me. And it was just like, just don't want to do the job. Like, we can't force them to do the job. And then we end up going in a different direction. But it was like, how would you say to an employer, how do we go out and find a good lady pest controller with the attributes you spoke about and get them to engage with us? Because we were like, just give up in the end, you know, after 300
we hear about that a lot. Even like there's only one other female technician in my branch. So
Same
like
as mine.
in our other Facebook groups that we kind of advertise our podcast on and stuff, like Pest Control Humor Depot and stuff, we'll get comments like, I've never even seen a lady who would want to do this job and stuff. But so I guess it just really depends. So some places have a lot of female technicians. Have you worked with a lot of females, Jerusha? I haven't really.
No. At my first company in my area, I was the only female. At my second company, I think there was 2 of us. Currently, I'm one of 2. And everybody got into it some like very random, weird way. Nobody was like, oh yeah, I just needed a job and needed the pay. Like every woman that I've known either knew somebody or, you know, was recruited from, maybe they worked at a warehouse and then they were recruited by the company as they were performing pest control. I guess, I don't know. I mean, you have to find, it's such a, like, you have to find the right person, period. Like even men, not every man could handle this job. So I think it is just kind of like lightning strikes to find somebody who.
Do you not think as the world gets softer, which it is, do you not think we're in a brilliant industry? Because when I was a young lad, like most blokes would have had a go at killing a rat in a shed. Like now we turn up and I'm like, oh, fuck, like, good son. And they're like, no, I'm not touching that. Like, I think that blokes are getting softer and softer. And I think the more, whether you're a man or a woman who doesn't mind going in and getting your hands dirty, I think we're pretty safe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as a woman, I feel like I've looked for, there's been a couple of times throughout my career where I've been like, I'm just going to go sit in an office somewhere. Like the pay is so much worse than what we make in this industry. Having a vehicle that's paid for and covered is such a huge perk of the job. Like there's just so many reasons that this job is great for everybody.
Just out of interest, when you say you have a vehicle that's paid for, what do you mean?
So our company provides us trucks. So I just got a brand new Toyota Tacoma, and then I have a gas card. So I fill up on their dime, and then I have a thing in my windshield for free that they pay for car washes. And then if it needs service, we have an app that we go in and we can go to a certain like they give us like, I don't know, 10 places to choose from.
Are you saying that you can use all that in your private life as well as your work life? Is that what you're saying?
No, just that I don't have to drive my own vehicle to and from work. I'm not putting the mileage on my own personal vehicle. So having a vehicle, like my actual car, I drive so little now, and when I do drive it, it's just for fun and like to bring my kids back and forth to sports and things. And so just the mileage on my own personal vehicle, the wear and tear on my own personal vehicle, because I'm not going anywhere every single day. Like there's days where I just go out in the work truck all day, and then I come home and I don't even touch my personal vehicle. Whereas if I worked, you know, say I worked half an hour away from home, I'd be putting that mileage on my regular. And then I do kind of do the thing where like, if I have a gap in my day, or if I'm passing the grocery store on my way home, I'll stop and get groceries to, I don't know, kick it to the man a little bit. So run little errands here and there, but I don't go joyriding in the truck or anything, but it does make a big difference on your personal vehicle.
Me and Alex have spoke about this, and we had a guy on from recruitment, didn't we? And it fucking pisses me off no end. I see an advertisement for a technician, and it's like, don't worry, we're going to give you PPE, you're going to get your holidays, you're going to get this. And I'm like, that's what you're supposed to do. That's not a benefit. That's literally. So when you said we get a truck, I was thinking like, are they expecting you to like go out in your car and do? Is the firms out there who are like, take your own car and do pest control?
No, but just compared to
compared
to when I worked at the salon.
Job.
When I worked at the salon, I lived 45 minutes away from the salon and had to drive my own personal vehicle back and forth. So cutting down on some of that a little bit.
Yeah.
So we've got about 10 minutes left. I'd really love, just with this 10 minutes, to turn the tables a little bit here and get you guys. Do you want to ask us any questions while you've got the opportunity, whilst you're sat here? Put your podcast hats on. Have you got any questions for us, either as pest controllers from the UK, or even pest controllers that are pesticles?
I'd love to know how you guys got started with the podcast. How did that all come about?
Because we weren't friends and we argued all the time. Probably about true.
So you were like, we should take this live on the internet.
Yes. I'll tell you. So Al's very much like the corporate man at one end, the left wing, and I'm the other side on the right wing. So when it was on like having discussions, I'd be at one end, we'd be at the other, and it was over FICAM, wasn't it? We're losing a chemical and we're discussing it, and it was like, so we'd just done a debate on it. He said what he thought, I said what I thought, and then we realised that even though you can have a difference of opinions, doesn't mean you have to fall out. It doesn't mean it's personal. And we just felt like it, and it then it wasn't even like felt like it we're going to do it. It just kind of grew legs and went, didn't it? And then it got a bit bigger, and then I run out of time, and then Hugh said he would jump on as producer, and so you all were. And it's not intentional. Someone said good cop, bad cop. With me and Al, it's not intentional. It's not like we think you've got to say this and I've got to take it. It's literally like what we think, and we just have two totally separate. Well, he's very fucks on with insects, knobhead. Insects, what's that about? Do you know what I mean? Insects and books and learning and stuff, and goes that way. And I'm like, kill it and go that way.
Yeah, we're that way.
Yeah.
We're just sweet and sour.
Yeah, but I think people get wrong impression on that. They think that mean you fall out and stuff, and it's like, it's not falling out. It's literally just debate. It's not like
Yeah.
It's just disagreeing.
Yes, like there are some things that Sean, Hugh and I, we will agree on absolutely. Like things that we want the industry to do, the direction we want the industry to take, the morals and the ethics of the industry, we're all very much aligned on. How we get to that point, and how sort of like the vehicles we use to get there and the tools we use to get there, completely different. And it's a difference of opinion. It's not an argument. So
and the thing is, if you can't have those discussions where you say to someone, I think this and I think that, then you're fucked. Because what happens is someone ends up not saying something, and then you miss out on a million opportunities to listen to somebody else's experiences, somebody else's opinions on it, and then you can make your own opinions far more informed, can't you? That's the way I look at it anyways. And if you think you're right on everything, then you're an idiot, aren't you? You've got to consider that you might be wrong. You've got. Yeah, but I don't know. That was it, wasn't it? Anything else, Al? How did we start? Is that right?
That was it. We started, literally was. It was because FICAM-D was being withdrawn, and there was a lot of comments along the general conspiracy that it's being withdrawn because it's good, it's too good. We need to bring something in that's crap, so people will buy twice as much of it. And having sort of like worked since pretty much the age of 15 in the manufacturing side of the industry, I was like, well, that is bollocks. like absolutely not. And I think I got on a bit of a sort of like rant about it, and Sean was just like, oh, should we do a little chit chat chinwag on my YouTube channel? And we enjoyed it.
That was it. Someone asked me the other day, and I was trying to. Was it YouTube? Yeah, I can't remember, but yeah, that was how it kicked off. And then what did we do with first guest? What happened there, Al? Can you remember?
We got Scott Johnson on from the BPCA to talk about.
No, I remember that. No, that the guests that happened as well, because what was I fucking kicking off over? Something or other, I can't remember now. Giving it proper big licks, and then Scott from the BPCA, who I was proper thrown under the bus, was like, he just popped up in the comments. He was like, I don't think that's correct. And I was like, well, come on next week and discuss it. And he came on and he rocked it, didn't he? He absolutely bossed it. He was brilliant. And then after that, it was just off to the races, wasn't it?
That's so cool.
Yeah,
it's been a bit of a pebble turning to a rock slide, turning to an avalanche, but we've loved it. Absolutely. So yeah. Anything else? We got another couple of minutes before we're going to ask you the famous last three questions. So
I've got a question for you. Who is the better technician? Out of you two, who's the better pest
Why?
controller and why?
Us
After
two?
3, go. 1, 2,
Oh.
3,
I
go.
think we're evenly matched, and I think
Don't
that
say that.
we-
Come on.
we're in
Come
different
on.
climates. So,
That's
like,
true. I don't know anything about scorpions.
yeah, we
Nope.
deal with totally different pests, especially bug wise. So I don't think that we could even compare. I think Jenny's an incredible technician. And I think if we switched states, we would struggle. Like, there's definitely things that I see on a daily basis that she doesn't see.
I was
And
only joking. I didn't want you to
vice
start fighting. I
versa.
was just weighing you. Yeah,
would
Jerusha
never.
cop out for the win. I agree, 100%.
That was very diplomatically put. Well done. If you'd asked us the same question, it would have been very easy.
Yeah, who's the better?
I like smashing things heads in. No, I don't. I don't want to.
That's
I
an
don't want that to
important
become a thing
skill
because
in
that's
this
not
job.
true. Yeah, that's not true. I used to. I've got over it. Yeah, Al's the insect man, aren't you, Al?
Which is an irony, considering that my job role is Global Technical Rodenticides Manager,
Mhm.
and I am much more a fan of bugs.
To be fair, though,
there we go.
this is one thing that the podcast has definitely done. It has got me more interested in bugs. There are certain things now that I look at which I find a lot more interesting. It's still boring, but it was a lot more interesting when I first started it. Like, yeah, I know about stink bugs. No, not stink bugs. Assassin bugs. And bite you hard. I've seen them. You got some of them, haven't you, Al?
I've got
Assassin
some of those
bugs.
in my labs,
Big,
yeah.
big black things. Yeah. What else do I know about, Al? Since I've learned from you.
Fly count analysis. You came on a
Oh yeah,
course.
right, yeah. And we're now incorporating that into our software as well. So that's interesting. So got that to be thankful for. Yeah. Yeah. The insect thing. I know that bed bugs have traumatic sex.
They do, they absolutely do. Everyone involved and those watching at the same time. There's one question came in, and here we go. To round the show off, what's the worst pest you've had to deal with?
I opened a bait station to a tarantula that was this big, and that was absolutely horrifying. So I closed the bait station and moved on with my day.
Yeah, but what are you thinking with that? Like, I don't need to put rodenticide in because it'll eat any mouse that comes in.
It exactly that belonged to the tarantula, and whatever happens in that bait station is not my business.
Oh yeah, that is basically IPM at the best, isn't it?
Exactly, natural, no chemicals needed.
Biological pest control, absolutely.
But somebody said scorpions. I do deal with scorpions a lot, and those are definitely not fun at all.
How'd you kill them?
We use Onslaught Fast Cap. It's a really good exterior spray. We usually just spray the perimeter of the home to try to keep them from getting in, or you just step on them. That always works. Actually, fun fact, men on the internet will pay you to take videos stepping on bugs and send them to them. Just in case anybody's looking for a side hustle.
Yeah, men fucking let themselves down. Some of the stuff that I think, fucking come on, away.
I make pretty good money in the summertime, though. I'm not gonna lie.
That's great.
I don't. Well, I have.
Don't know how to move on from that, huh?
Go on then, Jenny. Just quickly, what's the worst thing you've dealt with?
So I deal with a lot of cockroaches. That's my number one for my region and what I do. That is my number one. And so I would say it's the worst pest just because I've dealt with some pretty epic cockroach infestations where they're raining on me and all that good stuff. In the Tales from the Crawlspace world, we call that a roach baptism. So so I would say that's my worst pest just for my region and what I've experienced. Yep.
Yeah, we don't have anything interesting, do we, Al? Really? We don't have anything, I think, that you don't have, do we?
No, not really. Certainly not in the invertebrate world. Thankfully, because we're quite temperate and wet, it's not really great for many insects. And because we're an island, we don't get anything else. So no, we're quite vanilla when it comes to our pests. We've got our commensal rodents, our cockroaches, fleas, bedbugs, and ticks, and that's about it. Don't even have that many exciting mosquitoes. Terribly sorry. I think probably the worst job I've done, the worst pest job I've done, I was doing a field trial probably about 8 years ago, and it was on a little small holding, and the elderly lady who owned the small holding liked to keep chickens, loved to keep chickens, had hundreds of chickens, didn't have them in coops though, had them in rabbit hutches, and would shuffle these things in rabbit. But of course, the chickens didn't like to live in the rabbit hutches because it's a rabbit hutch, so they would perch in the trees. And the first time I done it was like Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. There was chickens, like full-on chickens, in every tree all around this. And I was like, why are they in the trees? There were so many rats. Any chicken that was left on the floor overnight would have just been like the Langoliers would have just been sort of like chewed to just a pair of feet. And it was so bad that when I was doing this field trial, I was using Brodifacoum in blocks, and so I was putting the blocks onto a rod, weighing out all of the blocks, because you have to weigh how much bait goes out and how much comes in for your field trial. And as I was sat in this little horse box in the middle of this site, just out of the rain, threading on my blocks, a rat, bold as brass, climbed into the horse box with me. I just sat there and looked at it, and it scampered along, and it climbed into the bucket of rodenticide, had a little nibble, and walked away. And I was like, I genuinely don't know how to record this in my notes, because Adam, he's a goner. That's enough Brodifacoum to drop a rat, but it's not come out of a box, so I don't understand. And I was there, I went to do a night survey there, and it was like the Sea of Sargasso. Just the floor was just this milling, writhing stage. I felt like climbing into the tree with the rat, with the just be like, move over, ladies. Time for me to join you. It was absolutely terrifying. And she was a lovely lady, and she would come out and be like, would you like a cup of tea? And it wouldn't matter how parched I was, the answer was always no.
It's always no. It's always no.
Oh no, sorry, I just drank something. I'm good.
Indrawn, bathed in sweat, panting. You need a drink? No.
That's great.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you ever so much for coming on tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure. But before we let you lovely ladies go, we've got 3 questions that we ask everyone. And we can either ask you in turn, or we can ask you both at the same time. But I'll take the first one this time. Sean, how does that sound? Have you enjoyed your time on the podcast?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. It's been a blast.
It was so much fun.
Yeah. Give us a shameless
It's amazing.
plug.
It's been an hour and a half.
Yeah, flies by, doesn't it? Give us a shameless plug.
Shameless plug. I don't know. What's
There
that?
might be a translation error.
Yeah. What?
Like a
you're
shout
gonna
out?
plug give us a shout out for
like a
product
shout
or
out.
service.
Yeah.
For our stuff or for you guys?
Not for you.
Oh. I thought you wanted us to give you a shout out on your show.
No. Give us a shout out of a product or a service that you would like to bring to the public's attention.
Um,
I'll give you a clue. You're doing your own podcast that people might be able to tune into. Just saying.
Check us
Pestrogen
out.
Podcast. Also, the Pestrogen Facebook group, which is being brought to Instagram and TikTok and things like that too. So just be on the lookout for us, ladies for the group, but anyone for the podcast. We keep the podcast to where guys can enjoy it too. Pretty much just like it was tonight. So yeah.
Okay.
But the group is no men allowed, and I think I had to turn down a join request from somebody in the room. But we had to turn you down because you're a guy.
Who?
No, I think that was Hugh.
Was it Hugh?
Wasn't it? I don't know.
Oh, you fucking creep trying to get into women's podcast. You absolute creep, you. Oh, no.
Well, I don't think he understood, okay? He was just trying to network.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, whatever, Hugh. Trying to get in the women's only group again. It's been caught trying to do in the women's toilets 3 times this week, just trying to get into network. Last one, Alf, one.
And I don't know where we are now.
Who would you like to see on the
love-
podcast, ladies? Who would you like to see on the podcast? If you had to pick some guests, and I think I know who you're going to say.
Tales from the
Brad,
Crawl Space.
Harvey, and Jack Starry from Tales
Yes.
from the Crawl Space. That would be an awesome crossover episode.
Yes.
Done.
Be
No, put that
prepared
one up.
when you have them on the podcast because they're great. You will laugh.
Oh.
Be fully prepared to laugh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, with that, I think we'll draw it to close. Just very quickly, though, we've got Beaumont Recovery Debt Collection next week for everyone listening to join in for that one, because that's going to be an equally exciting and, I think there's going to be a lot of value in that particular podcast. So for everyone here, thank you ever so much. And goodbye. Good evening. Laters.
Thank you for listening to the Beauties and Beasties podcast.